Isolation also occurs outside of the code itself. One thing that you may have seen when we're running these exercises is I oftentimes use a tool called Bwrap in order to isolate my environment. Here's something that I definitely do not want to lose time based on. I do not want to lose time because the environment in which I'm doing my work no longer works because I updated something on Friday and then some package conflicts with some other package and something breaks. And with the volume of work that we do, it's definitely the case that we have all sorts of arbitrary ad hoc errors that come up as a consequence of simple, innocuous things like updating packages. I've often told my colleagues that when it comes to certain business activities that we have, we are almost always going to be operating in a degraded mode. That is to say, when it comes to sessions like the one that you're watching right now, we'll always operate that session in a degraded mode because if we are operating that session comfortably, it probably means there's margin to put more effort into running more sessions. And we're going to push the total prolificness, the total volume of sessions that we do, to the point where it's going to start creaking and breaking. As a consequence of that, we then need isolation mechanisms in order to make sure that we're able to operate uniformly in that mode, because I can't say, oh, I have 2 minutes to stage, and my machine doesn't work properly. Oh, I updated a package yesterday, and I can't get my screen share to work properly. As a consequence, we use very aggressive use of things like Docker or virtual machines to create virtualized environments that are resistant to changes in the outside world. I update the software on my actual computer very frequently, but within the virtual machines, I update it fairly rarely. Additionally, you may have seen the use of things like autorunners. Here is the autorunner that I'm actually using for this presentation, and it makes use of this tool called Bwrap. The reason for that is I don't want it to be the case that my presentation fails. I need to suddenly make use of another machine, and I can't do that because there were certain files on disk or there were certain assumptions that I had that no longer are satisfied. I don't want it to be the case that I have hard-coded paths, there are certain files in certain locations. So part of this isolation is to give me quick, immediate warning that there may be some external dependency and to eliminate that dependency. The use of Bwrap as an isolation mechanism actually significantly improves the quality of my iteration loop. Similarly, within this Bwrap, you can see these tools like Penv, aggressive use of virtual environments. I don't like conda environments, and I don't like the typical way in which the Venv module sets up virtual environments. I think it's extremely hokey, so I wrote my own simple tool for setting up virtual environments. This is what it actually looks like. My tool is just as hokey as other people's tools, but it's my tool. And ultimately, the principle of isolation is much more important than the specific tool that I might use. I just happen to believe that these tools are a little bit more useful for my purposes. Now, I want to share with you another important principle, and it's a principle of aggressively avoiding context switching. Let's take a look. Well, whenever I say let's take a look, note that the output on the bottom of my screen updates. And this is the core conceit that we use across all of our presentations. You might be surprised to realize that this is exactly the same conceit that we use for our actual consulting and development work. I actually develop code in an environment that is not too dissimilar from the environment in which I load code presentations for you. And the reason for that is I have discovered through the process of what are called motion studies that one of the things that genuinely slows people down that they do not realize is the time that they are spending context switching. For those of you who have never undergone a motion study, this is something that we do for the courses that we teach. We ask people to solve a simple problem that usually takes me about 5 minutes to solve. We give them about 30 minutes, so about a 5-time expansion on how long it takes for me to solve it. And we record them. And we watch the recordings after they're done. And we analyze in that recording, where are you losing time in your process? This is something that you can do for yourself. Jump onto a Zoom call with just yourself, start that recording, solve a problem, and then watch it again. The idea of the motion study is, if, for example, you're trying to improve your baseball swing, well, you might film yourself doing the swing itself and then spot, oh, my shoulder's a little bit too high here, or if it's a golf swing, oh, my hips are not aligned properly. In a very similar sense, when we do motion studies, what we often see is Anytime you have two windows that are overlapping, where the top window is your editing window and the bottom window is your output window, it is almost always the case that you're losing way more time than you think just clicking to bring that overlap so that you can see the output. Even the simple process of bringing a window to the forefront is larger than your iteration loop budget. Bear in mind that there's also risk associated with that because you might misclick, you might click on your desktop, you might click on another window, and then trying to fumble to bring the windows back up, you just lose so much time. This is why when you see the setup that we have here, and this is genuinely the setup that I use for my actual development work, the principles of the setup are, 1, I should be able to see a change without affirmatively having to do anything. The change just appears. I might need to do a save operation at most. I might need to have a hotkey to do that saving, but the results appear at the bottom of my screen without me having to click around at all, without me having to Alt-Tab or change windows. And it's the case that if we're doing a presentation on something that's React-based, it'll mimic very similarly how I actually do development work. I'll have a browser right next to the coding window where I do not have to click back and forth in order to make each of those visible. Additionally, if I'm doing some coding and that coding involves some inputs and outputs. For example, I'm writing some kind of command line parser or some command line script. So here I have my argument parser, and I have my if name equals main, and I have a parser args here, right? Well, one of the things you can think is that I'm going to want to iterate over the different arguments that I have. So here, if I have an argument called x, and say this is a type int, and an argument y that's also a type int, I might want to try this with many of these different arguments. It's probably the case that if I need to go down into my bottom pane and I need to do Python script.py-x10-y20, or if I need to do an up arrow and then fiddly edit this, I'm going to genuinely lose a material amount of time in my iteration loop. And so as a consequence, what I might do here is I might hard code these arguments afterwards as part of my process, and then I can just remove those when I'm done. So here I might set these here as part of my testing just so I don't have to context switch. I stay in the same location. Anytime I move my mouse and anytime I move my cursor away from the window in which I'm editing, I'm risking losing quite a bit of time. This is why we are such believers in the use of autorunners. You may have spotted this just a minute ago when I brought back my normal view. Almost all the work that I do involves the use of an autorunner. It involves the use of something in the background that's looking for a change and automatically doing an action when it sees that change. Here you can see the latest version of my autorunner. Bear in mind, autorunners already exist. There's one called watchexec. There's one called ENTR. There's a million of these out in the world. I think they're all hokey. People probably think mine is kind of hokey, but it's not about the tool. It's about the process. The idea of the autorunner is not just, oh, cool, you see the thing update. It's about eliminating the context switching when I want to see that update. And so here in my autorunner, I just say, watch this particular file, and when you see a change to that file, run this particular command. Now, if you don't want to go through the mechanics of autorunner, no big deal. Why not? Just do something like this. Sleep for 1 second, and do a while true loop with maybe a clear at the end. And poll. It's not very efficient. It will give you a higher maximum latency because you'll see that you have to wait at least 1 second. If I bring this down to say maybe a half of a second or maybe a tenth of a second, it becomes very inefficient, but at least it means that I can stay in my editor and I don't have to move around in order to see the output of my code.